you just say it's been like a month since you toured in the studio with me?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I think so.
Yeah, well, you're traveling, you're doing all that.
Oh my God, I can't believe it's been that long. Like, it has been extraordinarily busy.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about it. We've added a new podcast to the weekly schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Recently partnered with the guys from In Extremis Performance. I sort of think I came into it more from the business development and human performance side. It's a company that does human performance coaching and programming for law enforcement that is on the special operations side of that job. So there's fitness, health, wellness, and there's obviously a shooting component to that. And man, it's been a fun ride, but God.
Sounds exciting. It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, even just from our end.
We just launched a new
culmination of a lot of work
recently.
recently.
So much from everybody. Everybody's working so hard, and they have been working hard. And it just we added rocket fuel to what I think this company's capable of, that's why I'm so excited about it.
Awesome.
We just launched the other day, 2 days ago from when we're recording this. And so there's a brand new website, inextremisperformance.com. It's a full CRM for us. It's, a brand new site, which is an undertaking in and of itself, but there's also 4 brand new programs or products that we put out on top of a couple of guides and some other things. So, dude, I don't even remember last weekend, coming into Monday. I have had little time to do anything. It's I'm at that point, and I think this is the lead in, I think, to today's discussion is you go through life and there's these ebbs and flows, right? There's the push and pull of all the things that happen, and we can't control all those things, and a lot of those things we can control. But the way I kind of always have balanced it, it's easy for me to picture it like this, is like there's health, wealth, and relationships. Mm-hmm. And those are the 3 things you should probably be focused on a good amount of the time. Yeah. And any category or anything can probably fit into one of those categories when you really kind of break it down. The challenge with that is just like anything else, like even when we look at our triangle of awareness here, just more specifically in the gym, which is what are we looking for? Is this performance? Is it longevity? Or is it aesthetics? Like there's all of the things that we might choose to do from a workout perspective or our nutrition perspective, whatever, supplements, they're going to be focused to one of those things. And then you can get benefit from the other things, but you can't do it all the time. All the time and expect to get a great result all the time. So on my triangle of health, wealth, and relationships, I've really been focused on the wealth and relationships piece. Yeah. My health has been, it's definitely taken a backseat in terms of my workouts. And just like, I'll look up and I go, dude, I got 30 minutes to get this done or isn't going to get done. And in the last few weeks, it's been hit and miss. It's been few and far between. So it starts to take its toll on you after a while. But you brought up like, hey, you wrote this article or a little bit ago. It was probably a year ago.
Maybe almost 2 years actually. Because it was my first article, I think.
Yeah, so. About how to kind of manage, let's just say maximum results in the shortest period of time. Yeah. Specifically, like if you are feeling pressed for time and you just don't have it, or that's what you've committed. Yeah. Like I'm only going to do, 30 minutes. People might be out there going, well, that's ridiculous. Then you're undercommitted. Well, maybe not. Like I just gave you a very specific scenario. This has been weeks of very late nights, a lot of travel, a lot of discussion, just a lot of sitting behind a computer. I hate it, but it just needed to get done. We had a deadline. We worked it. We made it. But as a result, now I'm coming off the aftermath of that and I'm running on adrenaline and caffeine.
Yeah.
And I will be for probably the rest of this week in order to just kind of get to the weekend and hopefully downregulate. But I think people struggle, like I struggled, getting it done. In my head, the hardest part is just getting to the floor. Once I'm on the floor, I got it nailed. I know what I need to do. I don't get messed up in my head about how many exercises am I not going to get done today because I only have 30 minutes or 20 minutes for that matter, 15 to get it done. How do I get my, how do I do what I need to do knowing it's still not really what I want to do, but come out of this thing ahead at the end. So anyway, I think today is 5 tips to maximizing your time in the gym when you're short on time. Yeah. So let's go through it. I mean, Ryan, what's your favorite top one there?
I mean, I think utilizing supersets, especially, but doing that intelligently. So I think that's a really big thing. So I specifically even say like antagonistic supersets, or we've talked about non-competing supersets.
Let's talk about that. Like define it.
So if I generally have like my upper body push movement, in sequence 1 or my first movement, I usually just hit straight sets, hit the set, rest, hit the set, rest. And then usually my upper body pull, horizontal pull is in my second sequence of that workout. And where I'm taking rest times in between each of those is just simply putting those two together where you're going right from your dumbbell chest press into your cable row or whatever it is, if you have the ability to. Because there's things with recovery in a workout. There is like your global recovery, globally meaning like your entire body, your entire system, your cardiorespiratory, are you breathing heavy? But there definitely is local recovery within a specific movement. So when you work on these things that are not competing, so if I'm working my pushing muscles, my chest, things like that, then I go into a pulling movement, they're not really competing. They're not taking away from each other that much. Hardly at all, especially from the local recovery. So when you pair that together, that helps you just get through those movements really, really efficiently and effectively. So that's the first thing to do. How do you utilize supersets in a block, even if that wasn't in your initial program?
Yeah, so 2 things here. One would be like you're saying, like your first sequence and second sequence, sequence 1, sequence 2.
Yeah.
Other people may relate to this as like an A block and B block
Yes,
in
exactly.
their workouts. So I think that's probably more commonly used, or that's more of the nomenclature, if you will. I would say like in my A block exercise, you may have like an A1, A2, you know? So this is what we're talking about. So in your A block, you might have a 1 and 2, and that 1 and 2 is the push and pull.
Exactly.
Or some other combination of exercise. So I think that's important to kind of a distinction, because, you know, this is going to come up in a minute, in a couple minutes. The other thing is like the superset. So I think there's other things people can do in order to maximize this in their kind of their super setting, right? Supersets are different than compound sets, are different than cluster sets, that are different from pyramid sets. There's a lot of different things. So maybe we just real quickly kind of go down like why the superset versus the compound set. Yeah,
well, so kind of what I was saying.
Compound set being same body part.
It's compounding on the last thing. It's building up each other, right? So a superset, again, you may feel minimal or let's say minimal performance drop even off your numbers from when you're hitting a superset, because they're not directly competing. Again, there's that global recovery of your full body, but then there's that local recovery of the local tissue. That tissue is not getting worked, right? Your pulling movements or your back isn't getting worked that much, and you're pushing, right? Those things aren't going to compete, so your performance is going to drop minimally. Where when you do a compound set, so say if you did like your push and then you compounded that with a fly, and usually you split those up. If you put them together and they're compounded, you're going to start to see a drop in performance on what you can actually hit those numbers or reps or what even that looks like. So that's the biggest component of that.
Yeah. So the compound set's an awesome tool, but when you're short on time and maybe frequency during the week, you know, if you've been working out 5 days a week and now you can only work out 2 to 3, like the supersets make a little bit more sense in terms of making sure you're getting all the things done versus getting all this focus maybe in 1 or 2 areas versus all the areas that need focus as well. So anyhow, I've actually seen quite a bit in the last probably 6 weeks or so. There's a little confusion on like what a superset compound set.
Yeah, I would say the average gym goer doesn't know. A lot of
they use the terminology.
They use them interchangeably when they are.
Which is weird, because when I was growing up, it was all bodybuilding, and everybody knew the difference between a compound set and a superset. Yeah. Now it's just kind of like, it's almost novel to people, but it's, again, with all the terminology and all the sexy sizzle words and everything else, I think people, they've swapped them. Right? They're not the same. All right.
I think the easiest way to remember compound set is like compound interest when it comes to finances.
Yeah. Building on top of one another.
Yeah, that's literally what I mean. It's building on top of the last thing.
Okay. So supersets to get some shit done.
Yes.
Right? Because you'll be able to get more done, or at least you'll be, if you're having trouble with frequency and actual time in the gym, that's a great place to go. There's a few other techniques you could use there, but I like that one because it's easy. It's like, I just did a push. Let me do the opposite of that.
Exactly.
I just did a squat. Let me do the opposite of that.
I was going to say, I really like, so he was talking about the antagonist compound sets, and I really like the top bottom, or as far as like
upper lower.
Exactly. Yeah. Upper lower.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about, this was an example, but totally we do like your hinge with superset with your push. Yeah. Something like that. Things that do not take away from the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that's inside our strong program, but more specifically, they're inside our online membership and the total body conditioning program that's in there. This is what it is. It's a 3 to 4 day a week program. You can modify it and know that you're going to get it all done. And there's a lot of upper, lower, push, pull stuff in there. That's how we've designed it in our sequence 1, 2, 3, or as many as 4. So we'll come back to that. So, okay. Well, what's the next one? What do you got?
Next one is hitting the primary movements or your core movements or main movements, or whatever you want to call them, and skipping some of the accessories. Like we talked about.
Yeah, we had
skipping the butts and guts and the arms and things like that.
Yeah, we had a discussion not too long ago about somebody that came in and like started their routine or started their and their goal is building muscle.
Yeah.
And strength, but they came in and they started their workout with their ab workout.
Yes.
Before they got into their,
Yes.
was it squats or deadlifts?
It was
deadlifts.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the ab episode. Yeah.
So, starting with your primary movement, the main
Big
focus
compounds.
lift needs to be in there, up front at the beginning of the workout. And those are the ones that we should likely be spending our time around, particularly when we're short on time because of the compound interest.
Yes. Of a compound exercise.
That we can derive from that. So I think that makes good sense to people. And then if you did start there, then it's really easy to kind of put the next one together. Because if I did a big squat, then maybe I'm doing an upper body push or pull on my next exercise. You kind of start with lower, maybe like deadlift.
That's a really big
RDL, right? Trap bar deadlift,
squat,
squat, or whatever else, and then move to something else. Again, for some people, this might seem really elementary, but I see people. The reason we're having this discussion is one, my own challenges, but two, they panic. They're like, I'm not going to get it all done, and they don't know what to choose. They end up gravitating to what they like doing or what they're good at doing,
or what they're emotionally tied to,
or what's available.
Arms and abs.
What's available. Like they walk into the gym, oh shit, it's 5 o'clock. I only have 30 minutes, and I was planning on getting inside the squat rack, so I guess I'm not going to squat today because they're all full with the broccoli haircutted, croc wearing kids that are hanging out looking at Instagram and tickling one another's what's instead of working out. My point of that being, just pick a squat pattern somewhere, right? Just pick a knee dominant pattern somewhere where you can really load that up, and then you can again find your upper lower there, your other again push or pull or whatever you're going to combo with it.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Next on that is really only hitting 1 or 2 top heavy sets versus 3. So most people think when they hit their top sets, or depends if you're doing pyramid style or you're doing repeating sets. But a lot of people think of, I got to hit my 3 heavy sets, right? My 3 by 10 of squats or whatever they're working with. Where it is optimal to get a lot of training sets in, but if you just hit 1 or 2 heavy sets, maybe you're taking that set even a little bit closer to failure than you normally would. That's a way. Stimulating continued progress is takes a lot less volume than it does to continue to build progress or continue to build muscle, right?
Okay, so can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah. So let's say like my squat, I would usually work up to, I do my build sets. I still want to warm up. You don't want to skip your warm up and just go right into your heavy set. But I would maybe, let's say I'll hit my 315 for 3 by 8 or whatever. And I'm going to hit that usually for 3 sets. Maybe in this workout, and I can even do this through the workout as we prioritize different movements, is I'm only going to hit 2 sets of my heavy squats. And maybe that second set, I'm trying to push it to 10, 12 reps, even though I normally, on the docket, I usually have 8 of that rep, of that prescribed when I'm trying to progress with. So that's a way to get, again, you're getting a high stimulation, you're still sending that muscle building and strength building signal, but you're not having to necessarily add in that other set, take that rest and go through that. So it's a lot more efficient that way.
Yeah, there's a few other things that you can do there too, just in terms of, we've talked like post-activation potential, potentiation, post-activation potentiation, PAP. And what you can do sort of with some of your more explosive type work, and then jumping right into, a more mainstay, like major lift in terms of what you can get from a neural response.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take extra time in your workout to do.
Yeah.
You could go back and listen to, PAP, our PAP episode. We actually
contrast training.
Contrast training. We did some of that. The other thing, one of the other things is, doing like a cluster set.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You guys want to go through the cluster set real quick? I mean, I don't see it being used very often. I kind of see it like by accident.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I think we do it in max.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been a while since I looked at it, but so it's taking one of your heavier lifts, let's say the bench press, and it's doing a couple repetitions followed by a pause, or not a pause, but a rest period, and then hitting that exercise again for a couple more repetitions. So you're working on a higher intensity, but less volume at a time.
Yeah. So,
and this rest period.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a couple things here, because people are like, wait, I already do that.
That's a normal. Yeah.
I do my 5 and then I rest and then I do another 5. I'm doing my 5 by 5 or whatever. But the specifics there are is, okay, I'm on the bench press, and let's say my 1 rep or my 3 rep max, or let's just say my 5 rep max, or whatever I'm going for in my 5x5 today, or my 8. Again, just a lower repetition because it's a little higher intensity.
Yeah.
I know what my threshold is, right? I know what my weight is. Again, let's say it's 315 on the bench press, and that's my working sets. I may be able to push that load
a little heavier
by a smaller percentage, let's say 10 to maybe 15%, which is quite a bit, right? Do 2 reps, right? Or 3 reps, re-rack it, back out of it. And that pause of that rest is very brief.
Like 15 seconds.
Yep.
Maybe,
like
right? So it could be maybe a little longer, going back to the PAP stuff that we talked about, but maybe a little longer, but probably not. It's going to be fairly short. And then you're going to pick that bar back up and you're going to try to get another 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So basically what you're getting is you're getting 6 reps at a higher intensity, higher load than you would have gotten your 8 reps times however many sets you were going to do. So in a way, you could cut your sets down, right? Maybe, again, go from 4 to 2 or 3 to 2 sets, increase your intensity through that cluster set action, and you would get a lot more stimulus is relative, but you could get quite a bit more stimulus because of the additional intensity that you're putting on there, minus the volume.
Yes.
Right?
A comparable stimulus in way less time is a big thing when you minimize the volume.
So cluster sets, I think, something people could mess around with. We actually have a video on the Red Dot Fitness YouTube channel that actually explains this. I think we use the squat, the barbell back squat, as the example in there. But if that kind of makes sense, or if you need a little bit more walking through, we did a kind of a couple minute video on what that looks like, how it works, the mistakes we see people make there. Again, going back to it's kind of done by accident a lot of times. This we go through very specific do's and don'ts and how to apply it. So I like those different things. So again, you mentioned supersets, or I like cluster sets. But working those top sets, you don't necessarily have to do as many. Let's get there faster and as fast as we can. And then when we're there, let's make those count. Let's not mess around there with a 5x5. We don't have time for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's get a 2x6, and do it in a cluster set. So those are heavy, 12 total repetitions. Like instead of your 25. Yeah.
Awesome. So want to go to the next point. Yeah. So the next one I put with this, and I like utilizing this more later in the workout, but is drop sets, something like that. And I even put specifically, I was thinking more something like even a mechanical drop set I really love too. So I wouldn't do this for your heavy bench press right out the gate, but if you are still really wanting, your priority was to get your arms or your lateral raises or whatever in, what we can do is we can either, one, the typical drop set is drop the load, and it's a way to kind of work to failure. So you hit the set with 20s until you can't, and then you go to 10s, or you go to 15s, go to 10s, kind of climb down the ladder. But I even like a mechanical drop set too, where you're playing with the length of the lever arm in the movement. So a good way to think about it with like a lateral raise, you're doing it more of that like almost straight arm, really sweeping out wide and away. And then as you start to fatigue, you can start to get a little bit more elbow bend, and it's bringing that in shorter. And it's easier to work it with that lever arm being shorter, but you can handle the same load. So it's even more time efficient than it is to go drop and switch loads and things like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sneaky one. Probably people don't think about too often. You have to be honest with this, right? You have to kind of understand what your RIR is and how to manipulate that by shortening, mechanically shortening that lever. So that takes a little bit more experience, I think, a little bit of understanding. I think it happens by accident a lot of times for people when they pick loads that are too heavy for them, or they're just working really hard, They're just like, no, I got to get another one. Well, you're doing another one, but that ain't quite the same as the first 6 or 8 reps that you did. And that's fine. I'll say this to the day I die, as long as it's not putting somebody at risk for injury, and it could potentially, or is adding to the benefit of what it is we're trying to do, build strength, hypertrophy, power, whatever. Like a guy that's got like a barbell in his hand, right? He's doing barbell, or bicep curls, straight bar bicep curls or whatever. I'd rather have him give me a couple reps at the end where he's throwing that bar to the top.
Put a little English on it.
And then controlling it to the bottom, then put the bar down.
Exactly.
As so long as it's not setting him up for failure, it's not going to exacerbate an issue that he may have, or whatever. So I think it kind of happens by accident, so people kind of get it. We're not talking about momentum. Right. In that case, I am. Right. But in your case, we're talking about still strict, mechanic or form. We can call it form. You're just shortening the length of your arm and still maintaining that tempo, that intention, that range of motion, all of that stuff. So don't use that as an excuse to just go ham.
Exactly.
And look wild out there. I love that one. That's actually the one I don't think about. I think it just kind of automatically happens sometimes, but I think that's cool you brought that one up. I would not have thought about advising somebody to do it that way.
Yeah, it's a really great way. I utilize it a lot with clients when I'm trying to get a little bit more of a stimulus. I only got a minute or two left. I don't know, a reverse fly and immediately into a wide row, like something like that that's working similar. This is a kind of a compound set when we're doing, even though the movement may be a different name than what or whatever, the two movements, but it's working the same tissue, it's compounding on it. One's a little bit of a weaker movement. You start with that and then you build into the stronger movement. But because you're fatigued, it's giving a good stimulus there. So
yeah, actually, there's another point to this. I think it's a really good coaching advice for coaches out there. Like if you got that client that just lollygags in between sets or putting,
I don't have any of those. I don't know what you're talking about.
Or like just is always the huffing and puffing, or seems to take forever. It looks like a pitcher on the mound between pitches where they're taking 5 minutes to scratch their balls, wipe their forehead, take their glove off and put it on. It's like, fucking throw the ball, dude. Let's go.
I'm ready when you are.
That's a good way to maybe control the tempo of the session and keep your client, doing the things they need to be doing instead of giving them a space to go lollygag or F off. In a way, knowingly or unknowingly. All right, what's next?
Last one is honestly, it's just a simple one, but to shorten your rest times. Especially it's pretty popular right now to. And that's good. A lot of people don't rest long enough, but it's popular to kind of talk about these 2 to 3, maybe even 4-minute rest times, depending on your goal. Another way to just get the work done is just shortening the rest time a little bit. Even honestly, you'll be surprised you're shaving off like a 30 seconds of your typical rest time. Really can add up throughout the workout of just getting things more efficient. And actually on that, I would talk about this. A lot of people don't do this. Measure your rest times. If you're showing time, that's actually probably better tip is measure your rest times and really being honest with what are your rest times between sets. Keep on task with that.
Yeah, it's the chicken or the egg there for sure. But I agree with you. And then going all the way back to the top of that with the number one, when you're talking about the push pull upper lower, this affords you that right. If you're working in that A sequence and B sequence like we just talked about at the top of this podcast, you will be able to shorten your rest times because you're working non-competing areas of the body. So it doesn't need that longer rest time. So you can keep things moving a little bit.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it keeps it going. So, I mean, I think we're able to do that in about half an hour, which is what we're trying to do here, be efficient with time. So
it's good on point with that.
Yeah. So if you're one of those people that's a little struggling like I was just for a period of time, all of these things are great ways to kind of do something different, but keep yourself moving and feel like you're getting some stuff accomplished. And, if you're throwing things in, you want to experiment with things like cluster sets, modifying your rest time, measuring your rest time. I think it's great advice, right? Or, as a coach who's trying to keep your client moving and, working, mechanically shortening levers or things like that, maybe even ranges of motion where it makes sense to keep a client moving, get them going. Again, throw that bar up a couple of times at the end, just so we're getting those reps and that intensity in. Those are all good ways to keep it moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this, a lot of people have this conversation a lot of we tend to focus on trying to be perfect in our program, which is good. You want to adhere to whatever your current programming is and get all your movements in. That should be the typical. But a lot of the times, and I would do this a lot, especially years ago, where if I can't get everything in, I just wouldn't even do it, and I would either push off my workouts, or that's when people miss their workouts. So it is much better. Yes, it's good to get your hour and a half typical length, but this is much better than just skipping and continuing to push off. This is going to help your progress a lot more. I love someone with this, especially if there's something like, okay, you're on vacation and you want to keep your program going, but you don't want to take all that time to do it. This can really be utilized. You don't need to be perfect on your program all the time. You just need to kind of keep one foot in front of the other and keep moving on the program.
Great advice. I'm really glad you brought that up. So the last question I would ask is so what advice would you give somebody to go, yeah, I'm feeling struggling, I'm feeling challenged, and I'm feeling stressed here. How do I know which sequences to do? Which ones should I pick out of here? Which ones are the most important?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're using the A, B block, if you literally go through the alphabet, that's the order that's important. Or if you're using 1, 2, 3, 1's the most important, right? So whatever is generally first in the workout, give that the most priority, give that the most intention. And then as the workout goes on, it's a little bit less importance, a little less importance. Whether it's dropping sets or just completely dropping the movement or whatever you're going to do with that. So big stuff important first. That's going to stimulate the most for continued progress. And then, if the arms, things like that, that's not nearly as important.
Yeah. So if you're in our strong, our max, our total body conditioning program, physique, things like that, within a membership or with our self-guided programs, whatever, we call them sequences. We're not calling them like A blocks, B blocks, or whatever. That's how you do it. Like, because all of the accessory stuff is generally towards the end. That's when you get the ab stuff. We don't start with accessories, which would be in like D block before we do A block, or sequence 4 before we do sequence 1. So that's the stuff that could kind of get cut off at the end. It's not that important. Like, not that you can't get benefit from it, but you're going to get way more benefit from doing those priorities first and dropping those later, and find your way back into it some other time.
100%. Yep.